Hey, what's up guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here, and a question that is often asked of me in my weekly Q&A sessions pertains to my Halo 5 walkthroughs. And not just the legendary ones, now that they're coming out on a weekly basis, but also the mythic walkthroughs. Now I realize that it's been a long time since I've done anything really mythic related on this website. In fact, probably since then, I've received roughly 20,000 new subscribers. So it stands to reason there is a large portion of folks out there who may not be completely familiar with the concept of Mythic Difficulty and what it is and how it pertains to Halo. So I'm going to start out by explaining exactly what Mythic is and how it became a movement in the Halo community. Mythic is a derivative of the term LASO or LASO, which is an abbreviation for Legendary All Skulls On. This was something that started with Halo 3. It was possible in Halo 2, but it wasn't practical in Halo 2. If you wanted to use all the skulls at the same time while you were playing a Halo 2 mission, you had to create separate profiles to obtain each skull. So each time you started up the game and you wanted to play with all skulls on, you had to go through each of those scenarios to reobtain the skull, and that was a pain in the ass. Especially with the I Would Have Been Your Daddy skull, fighting tons and tons of elite ultras. So Halo 3 really became the first game where it was a practical thing to do. It wasn't something that people really thought about doing until the idea came up in a weekly update by Bungie. And prior to that, no one had really tackled it before. The idea had been circulating, but no one had really taken on the challenge. And I became the person who took on that challenge. Partially because Halo 3 was so easy for me on Standard Legendary, but also because I really enjoyed the challenge. And for me personally, whenever I got a Halo game, the highlight was always the campaign. Multiplayer was always secondary. And I wanted to make the most out of that campaign experience. And so I took on this challenge and became, by Bungie standards, the first person in the world to beat it and create a guide for it. And pretty soon a community was born from it. And so since then, ever since Halo 3, it has become more or less a tradition for me to create a Mythic walkthrough for the current game. But I haven't done it for Halo 5 yet. And people have asked me why. And I've briefly addressed it in other videos, but today I'm going to flush it out for you because having it as a side comment or just a couple of minutes of response time doesn't justify it. Not when you're talking about something that's been around for almost a decade. So today I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons why currently the Halo 5 Guardians Mythic Difficulty walkthrough is on an indefinite hiatus. Before I continue, I do want to give you guys a fair heads up. Some strong language might be used. I know a lot of you don't care, but it has been brought up by viewers before. They're not overly happy when I curse or anything like that. Over the last few years, I've made an active effort not to do that. People have reached out to me to let me know that they watch my videos with their children, which I'm honored to hear that. I think that's so awesome. At the same time, for this particular video, since that is the case, you might want to make sure they're not in the room. I won't be going, Pulp Fiction on you or anything on this video, but some cursing may happen because this is a very candid conversation. There is nothing here that has been prepped. Most of this is off the cuff. And it's something that I feel like my community needs to hear to fully understand the situation between me and 343 Industries and the rest of the Halo community. Unlike in my other top 5 videos or top 10 videos, there is no specific order here. These reasons could be placed in any particular order, but I'm listing the ones that come to mind first. So with that in mind, my first reason for not continuing with the Halo 5 Mythic walkthroughs, or Mythic in general at this current moment, is that communication lines have been cut between me and 343 Industries. I don't know why. The first signs of this popped up in 2015 when I started doing my Halo 3 LASO project, which was going through the campaign with All Skulls On and Legendary, sans Blind, a mission or a campaign that I started back in the days of Halo 4. And 343 did not seem that interested in it, which was a first. Typically, whenever I came out with any sort of Halo walkthrough, they were excited about it, or they would at least talk with me about it. That was not the case here. And at first I thought maybe they're just busy with Halo 5 Guardians, but then when I started working on my Legendary walkthrough for that, again, there was no one answering on the other end. And at first I thought maybe it was because I took too long with that. And so when Halo Wars 2 came out, I said, okay, I'm going to get right on it this time. Finished within 2 weeks, nothing from 343 Industries. And I began to wonder, what did I do wrong? What? Because I honestly don't know. The first thing that came to my mind was that when Spartan Assault and Master Chief Collection came out, I didn't take it as seriously as maybe they wanted me to.
2 minutes remain.
And there were a lot of reasons for that. I had a lot of personal reasons. First and foremost, I considered these secondary Halo titles. These aren't the AAA ones like Halo or Halo 2 or Halo 3, or even going all the way to Halo 4 and Halo 5. They just weren't. They weren't that big of a deal, and I had enough going on in my own life that I didn't make that as a priority, nor should I have. In 2014, I switched jobs twice. I also got engaged that year. My now wife had severe medical issues later that year. And then the following year, I got into my accident. As you can imagine, Halo was not on my list of priorities at that point. And I worked to explain that with 343 Industries when I finally started getting back into the picture. The community manager at the time acknowledged it, said that they were sorry for everything that had happened, but at the same time, it didn't really seem to change anything. I noticed that Naked Eli got his copy of Halo 5 Guardians a week in advance, and even with my reputation with 343 Industries, not only did I not get a copy from them, I didn't get an advance copy either. So my first thought was, what's up with that? And the only thing I could figure at the time was maybe that was why, because I didn't take Spartan Assault or Master Chief Collection very seriously, so maybe it was something that I did. And then when the game came out and I gave my review for it, about half of it at least was sort of bashing the campaign. And I thought maybe that's it. Maybe that's why, because they didn't like me being brutally honest about my thoughts towards Halo 5. They wanted me to sell the game. So I thought, okay, maybe this is my fault. But then something weird happened. Naked Eli got shafted by them. And he arguably had a stronger connection to them than me. These were folks who sent Naked Eli all over the world for Xbox events, and to suddenly have his gamer tag taken away and not really helping him recover that aspect of him, because that was his brand. Instead, they stood on the sidelines and let him take the fall. And that just seems so weird for them because of all the support they've given us in the past. I have to explain to you why losing the support of the developer is so important. Because when I first started doing Mythic Difficulty, when I completed that guide, Bungie personally reached out to me. I didn't ask for them. They reached out to me and told me how impressed they were, that they had an internal discussion with their dev team, and they thought that feat, beating the game on Legendary with All Skulls On without dying at all, without saving and quitting, they thought that was impossible. And so, as a token of their gratitude for me making that commitment, they gave me recon. I had no idea that was coming. When I first started doing Mythic Difficulty, it was because I wanted my own carbon footprint in the Halo community. I wanted a legacy within my favorite franchise, and that was how I was going to do it. Bungie supported that fully and made sure that they made sure that I knew that I was important to them. A year after I did the first Mythic walkthrough, I decided to do a follow-up walkthrough because a lot of people had come into my community in that year, in that 12 months, and they had added a lot more tips and tricks. And I thought, you know what, let's make this a community guide instead of just a guide from me. And so that's what I did. But I did something else in addition to it. I reached out to Bungie because at this point in my relationship with them, I had an open line of communication. I could email them, I could call them, I could text them. I felt like I was one of them. So I pitched the idea of what is now known as the Summer Mythic Recon Challenge, or the SMRC. And what this was a chance for Halo community members to beat missions of Halo 3 on Mythic and be entered into a raffle for their chance to earn Recon armor. Keep in mind, this is before Recon was available to earn in-game. It is one of the highest sought prizes of Halo 3. And they went for it. They said, that sounds like a great idea. And thousands of people participated in these contests that took place over the course of 10 weeks. We did a different mission for the first 9 weeks, and for the final week, anyone who had successfully completed all 9 missions of the campaign on Mythic were entered into a 10th and special raffle. Bungie took not only me by surprise, but everyone by surprise when everyone who successfully did that, it wasn't a raffle they were entered in, they all received Recon. That's how much they appreciated this. After I did my walkthrough for Halo 3 ODST, they invited me out to Seattle to visit with them, to come to their studio and talk to them. It was such a great experience. They had the life-size replicas of the weapons that were used in live-action Halo features. I got to hold a life-size gravity hammer. That was kick-ass. And I learned after that when they were working on Halo Reach, they were designing the skulls around the concept of Mythic. One of the developers walked up to me, a good friend of mine now, and said specifically, we want to see you beat this. We saw what you did with the Mythic, with the skulls in Halo 3. We've tweaked them a little bit. Let's see how you conquered this. And interestingly enough, it was still a fair fight. Yes, it was an uphill battle, but it was won. And to know that they cared so much that they wanted to make Mythic, or the concept of playing on Legendary with all skulls on, more mainstream, made not just me, but my community feel important and needed and wanted. And once my Halo Reach Mythic walkthrough was officially completed, they even started doing weekly challenges in Halo Reach for people to try this for themselves and to earn something in-game for accomplishing this goal. And I've got to give 343 some credit here, even though it broke my heart when they took over, because now I didn't have the Bungie support that I used to, because whenever I did a walkthrough for Bungie, they posted it on the front page of their site. It was a big deal because thousands of people saw that and clicked on that link because of Bungie. Now, when it changed hands to 343 Industries, we had a divided community. I didn't know what to think here or how to proceed. My relationship with Bungie was forged on an ideology that was no longer under their control, under a product that was no longer theirs. So how do I proceed from here? And to 343's credit, they welcomed me with open arms. They invited me to their studio. They invited me to their private events. They sent me stuff in the mail. I actually got cookies for Christmas one time from them. They gave me free games. They eventually got to the point where they even named an achievement after me in the Master Chief Collection. And this was just so awesome how it was building up, because, you know, this is like a fanboy's dream when it comes to Halo. At this point, I'd already had objects in-game named after me, more specifically with Halo Reach. It's now at an achievement. The last thing on my list was to have Mythic an actual achievement where when you clicked on it in the menu, you were automatically playing on Legendary with all the skulls activated. I kind of thought of the concept similar to Ultra Nightmare Mode in Doom 2016, where it's basically just their Nightmare Mode, but you can't die. And I figured that that's sort of how it would work for a Mythic difficulty, but it never happened. And they just stopped talking to me. And I've reached out to them several times. And it might be something that I did. It could be a company situation. It could be an internal problem. Maybe they're doing a lot of restructuring. Maybe they're having a lot of chaos. over there, and so maybe the community itself isn't that important to them anymore. Or maybe it's the campaign. There's been a lot of focus lately on esports and championships, so maybe the campaign isn't that important to them anymore, and that would be a tragedy if it's true, because for a lot of people, myself included, the campaign is the highlight of Halo. Everything else comes second. So that was my first reason for not wanting to continue with the Mythic walkthrough. The second one is communication lines were cut between me and HBO, aka halo.bungie.org. The reason why that's important is because that is where I got my start for Mythic. In 2008, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't something that I'd really invested much into. I didn't have a capture card, and I really didn't know much about YouTube. I didn't know how big it would become. And looking back now, I wish I had known, but I didn't. So prior to that, your go-to source for Halo outside of Bungie.net was halo.bungie.org. They had walkthroughs for both Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 2, but no one stepped forward for Halo 3. I said in my proposal about doing Mythic Difficulty as an upgrade to Legendary.
2 minutes remain.
And they happily accepted the offer. They said, let's do it. So I did my guide for them, and ever since then, it has become a tradition. Every time I did anything Halo related and posted it on my channel, it was a story on that site. But interestingly enough, around the same time that I lost touch with 343, I also lost touch with HBO. I highly doubt the reasons are the same. More than likely, part of it is at least due to the change of the guard, if you will, for halo.bungie.org. The original person who ran the site, and I'm sure still technically is in charge of it, but doesn't have much to do with it anymore, basically handed over the keys to somebody else. And so I feel like that's probably where the initial breakdown of communication was. I don't know why the original person doesn't do much over there anymore. It could be personal issues, it could be professional issues. Whatever the case is, communications were dropped, and my information was not passed on. I first noticed this when I started doing my LASO project for Halo 3. This was something separate from Mythic. This was dating back to when I did my LASO challenge for Halo 4, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But this was essentially going through the game on Mythic sans blind. And so I started doing this for Halo 3, and whenever I submitted it to halo.bungie.org, it got swept under the rug. I don't know why, it just did. When I brought up the concept of doing a Mythic guide for Halo 5, again, no response. So right there out of the gate, I've lost my two single biggest supporters in terms of single entities. Both 343 Industries and halo.bungie.org were not interested in pursuing anything with me or with Mythic Difficulty. And that was a massive blow. That was the backbone of my encouragement right there. How do you even begin to fathom something like that? You think you're on a track to go somewhere, and then everything changes. What bothers me the most isn't so much that it happens so much as I have yet to understand why. When you get fired from a job, you don't walk away from there thinking, what did I do? You at least have some general idea. Even if the reason that they have on paper isn't the reason behind their motivation, you still have an idea of what happened and where the breakdown began. When you're in a long-term relationship with someone and the relationship ends, the person typically doesn't just disappear. If the relationship ends, you know why it ended. Usually it's a number of reasons, but ultimately you have at least an idea of where things went wrong. The reason why it's important to know these things is so that you don't make the same mistake twice. And essentially that's sort of what this feels like, a long-term relationship with somebody and they just disappeared. They didn't die. They didn't go to jail. They just decided they didn't want anything to do with you anymore. And that's exactly what that feels like. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3 comes down to you, the fans, and what you want your experience on my site to be. I want to create content that you enjoy. And while there does seem to be a minority of folks out there who do come here solely for the guides, Most of you don't.
Red confirmed.
The walkthroughs that I've released over the past year and a half have been some of the worst performing videos in the site's history, at least in terms of walkthroughs. And that comes as such a surprise for me because that was what got me started. That's what became my ultimate footprint in Halo, were the walkthroughs. I started doing Legendary Walkthroughs when Halo Reach came around retroactively. I did this because people at the time didn't want to try Mythic or LASO. To them it was an impossible feat, and I wanted to prove to them that it wasn't. So the Legendary Walkthroughs were initially meant to be a stepping stone. I figured if I could teach people how to beat every single mission in the Halo franchise from start to finish on Legendary without dying, that if they could achieve that, then they'd be more willing to try out Mythic and get the most out of their Halo experience. That's where the concept of the Legendary Walkthrough for me and this site came from. My first Legendary Walkthrough was Reach, then I went back and did ODST, Halo 3, eventually I did Halo Anniversary, and Halo 2. And believe it or not, I even went back and did Halo Wars. As to why the walkthroughs for Halo 5 Guardians didn't do so well, I've had a number of theories thrown out there. The main one that seems to stick is that I waited so long to do them. And that does make sense when you think about it, except that really wasn't the case with the other walkthroughs. Keep in mind that even my Halo Wars walkthrough came out 5 years after the game. And even that one has outperformed anything that I've released in the last year and a half. So I took that to heart, and when Halo Wars 2 came out, I made an active effort to make sure that I got my guide out there, my Legendary Walkthrough for Halo Wars 2, out there as quickly as I could, and had it done within 2 weeks. And it still didn't do well. I understand for a lot of YouTubers out there, for a lot of YouTubers who don't do this full time or don't intend to make a career out of it, they just do it casually. You know, 1,000 views may seem like a lot to you, but when you have over 27,000 subscribers, that means that only a very small percentage of your viewer base cares about that sort of thing. Since then, I've produced a lot of other content that you guys seem to enjoy, and I feel like that's the stuff that I should be focusing on. That's not to say that I won't do walkthroughs at all. I dedicate my Fridays specifically for video game walkthroughs because that is for my legacy subscribers. I have such a debt to pay to them because these are the guys that helped get me started, and they're the ones who stuck with me for the last decade. Or if you're strictly a YouTube follower that's been with me from the get-go, 7 years. That's a long time. That is the longest I've held down any job. And so, for them, for the folks who still come here for the walkthroughs, I make Friday my dedicated day. But let's go to another theory for a second and say, no, it's not the fact that it was released later. It's not even the fact that other people do it now. It's the fact that no one likes the new Halo games. All right? So I did a little experiment last year where I actually ported over my Mythic walkthrough from HBO to this website for Halo 3 ODST. Not one of those 8 videos got over 1,000 views. That shows me that the guides aren't important to the majority on this site. And these guides are not easy to make either. This isn't something that I just conjure together within a couple of hours. It can take days because I go through and reverse engineer these campaign missions. I have to deconstruct them. I have to be able to understand the scenarios and the enemies and the ways to dispatch them, the best ways to approach each scenario. This takes time. This is why there was once a time when I was the go-to guy for a Halo walkthrough. So this isn't something that I can just do in a day. And so when it comes to the Mythic guides, I know this is going to take significantly longer to do. So the question is, if I do it, are you going to watch it? Are you going to make use out of it? Are you going to appreciate it? Or is it not your thing? Trust me, I'm not blaming you if it isn't. I completely understand. especially with the newer content out there and Halo 5 not being as popular as some of its predecessors, or most of them I should say. I understand it. I don't hold that against you by any means. I get it. But that also means that it doesn't benefit either one of us, me or you, to waste time building them when I could be busy creating content that you really do enjoy. And that's what I would rather do. So that's reason number 3. Reason number 4 is not going to come as a shock to anybody, and that's just the fact that I really didn't enjoy the Halo 5 campaign as a whole. I'll openly admit that when I started doing the Legendary Walkthrough for Halo 5 Guardians, I did gain a new appreciation for it. There were certain aspects that I began to enjoy that I missed the first time through, so I will say that it's not as bad as I initially thought it was, but that's not good enough. Not as bad is nowhere close to good. And so when I do these guides, I want to have fun with it. I want to make sure that you enjoy them. I want to make sure that I enjoy it. But if I'm not enjoying it, then why am I doing it? As I said before, this thing takes time to do. And Halo 5's campaign really wasn't built well for Mythic. When you have the squad system introduced, that allowed 343 Industries to create much larger battle scenarios. Unfortunately, on Mythic, you have the Iron Skull activated. When you activate the Iron Skull on Halo 5 Guardians, you cannot revive your companions and they cannot revive you. Once they're dead, they're out. That's it. That means that you have to face these massive armies on your own. So that's the first one right there, is the severe imbalance that is the Halo 5 campaign. The second reason is the overwhelming number of Prometheans and Promethean-based missions in this game. They are really trying to shove them down your throat in Halo 5 Guardians. There are 2 Covenant-only missions in Halo 5. There are several that feature just the Prometheans. Most of them are mixed, but again, there are a lot of Prometheans in this game, and they just aren't that fun to fight. They could be, and I'm hoping they make improvements to them in the next major Halo title, but right now they just magically warp in. They can shoot you from across the map, even with lesser weapons, like the suppressor or the bolt shot, which can both home in on you. And it becomes a very jarring experience. I like a challenge, but I don't like a near impossibility. Some of my colleagues in the Mythic community have already gone through the campaign on Legendary with all skulls on, and I watched them do it, just to see what this would be like. And let me tell you, it is not pretty. One of my colleagues that I mentioned quite a bit here, Legendary Smile, he's been a very dedicated member of the Mythic community for years. His playthrough of the first mission involves him mostly being outside the map and avoiding combat entirely. That's not what Mythic is supposed to be. Mythic is something that you should be able to charge in there head on and fight it with brute force if you want to. Sure, you can skip some parts, but it's meant to be challenging. It's meant to be combat intensive. If you have to avoid combat entirely in order to succeed, what's the fucking point? And that's the point with Halo 5. It just isn't fun from a Mythic perspective. It wasn't balanced for that. And that comes to my 5th reason. And this directly involves one of the skulls that's used in Mythic. And that's the Blind Skull. The overall reason is I had pitched to 343 Industries several times that Blind was an unnecessary skull, or at least needed to be tweaked better for future games, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, I was ignored. And what do I mean by it needs to be tweaked? So, I had been complaining for a while that Blind is an unnecessary skull. You're probably thinking, so you're complaining that it's challenging. No, that's not it. When most people associate Blind as a challenge, it's because you have to shoot from the hip. That's easily fixed by putting a piece of fucking tape on your screen. That's it. Now, I don't do that personally because I don't want to scruff up my 60-inch television. But basically other people can do that. That's how you get around that whole idea of having to shoot from the hip. To me, that wasn't the challenging part. I could adjust to that. The challenging part for me was not being able to see your health or your ammo count, or what weapon you're holding. And the last one is a bigger deal. So let me explain just a little bit. One of the things that sort of takes me out of the experience with blind is that you can't see your arms or your weapons. So you feel like you're just walking around like an armless biped. It takes away from the experience. It takes away from the immersion. Originally, I submitted an essay to 343 Industries. This was well after they knew who I was and had welcomed me into their community, explaining that a solution that could sort of meet halfway was combining the concepts of old school blind with the malfunction skull from Halo Anniversary. And what do I mean by that? So basically, the blind skull would eliminate the HUD. You couldn't see your reticle or your ammo count or what grenades you have or your radar, but you could at least see your arms and your gun to make it feel at least a little bit more realistic. You'd still have to shoot from the hip because you don't have a reticle, but it doesn't feel like you're just walking around like a floating head. And so I thought that that was something they would take seriously. And the fact that they didn't, I not only took as an insult to myself, but also to my community. And let me help you understand why. I have done well over 100 guides for Halo at this point. Both me and my community, not just myself, but my community, are known as some of the best campaign players in the world. Even Bungie stated way back then that I knew their game better than they did, at least their campaign. When they told me that their developers didn't even think that was possible, that I'd beat the odds, when I finally met them in person, they told me, you know this campaign inside and out like the back of your hand. The good hand, not the one with the glove. And there should be some credibility with that. When you have things in-game that are attributed to your community, when you have weekly challenges, when you ultimately have achievements named after you, that shows something. That shows that your community has merit and input. So you would think that when they're telling you not to do something or making a suggestion, it might be something that you want to take in consideration. But it was ignored for reasons that I don't fully understand. I don't see a lot of machinima being made in campaign, and I will say that if they actually included theater mode in campaign just like Bungie did, that wouldn't even be an issue at all. But the fact, whether or not you side with that agreement isn't the point here. The point is that it was shunned, that it was ignored. There wasn't even a response to that. To show you the amount of effort that I put into this, after I wrote that essay to them, as a finale to my Halo 4 Mythic walkthrough, I went back through the campaign and did it from start to finish, no saves, no deaths, on Legendary with all skulls on except for blind, so that they could see and you could see how fun the experience could be with blind removed. To up the entertainment value of the video, I also made sure I included all the cutscenes, both in campaign and Spartan Ops, as well as the terminals, to give you a nice entertainment source in addition to a walkthrough, an all-in-one package, if you will. But this wasn't just a solo effort, it was a joint effort. This was an effort made by other community leaders as well. If you look at the intro to that video, and I'll post a link in the description below, this is called my Halo 4 LASO Challenge video. I had help from Green Skull over at Ready Up Live. I had help from Naked Eli, RC Master, Louis Wu over at HBO, and so many others. This was a joint effort, not just from my community, but several communities. And when this still came to pass, when the Blind Skull was still there, that was their way of telling me, or at least as I take it at face value, that my opinion and the opinions of my community and my associates mean nothing. So here's what it's come down to. They don't care about the Mythic guides. HBO doesn't care about the Mythic guides. You don't care about the Mythic guides, and I don't, at least not at this stage of the game. They don't want to see them, you don't want to see them, I don't want to put the effort into them. And even if I did, who's to say that anyone would take it seriously? This isn't to say that I will never do it. Never is a long time. But that's why I'm saying, at least for now, this Mythic thing I'm hanging up the towel for, at least for this game. It's not the first time I've done it. I didn't do it for Halo Anniversary or Halo 2 Anniversary, just because of the way the skulls were presented in the game. And I may not do it for Halo 5 Guardians. Will I do it for Halo 6? I don't know. Maybe the relationship between me and 343 can be repaired. Maybe those lines of communication can be reopened. Maybe that'll happen with HBO. And if it does, I will certainly draw a new perspective on this situation. But as it stands right now, I can't see anyone really benefiting off of me going to the trouble and taking all this time to make something that no one's going to watch. Especially when I know there's a lot of other stuff out there that I create that you seem to like. I like doing the Q&As. I like doing these Monday project videos. I still like creating some sort of guide for you on Fridays. Even Sunday fun days are fun. I want to create stuff that you want to see. I hope one day that these lines of communication can be repaired. I hope Mythic can become big again. I hope Mythic can be something that everyone can enjoy. So here's to hoping for something better in Halo 6. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry that I went on that little rant, but I did want to take the time to help you understand exactly why it's taken me so long to do the Legendary Walkthroughs and why the Mythic ones are currently on a hiatus. Fortunately, there are other people out there like Legendary Smile, Michael Smith, Olden Aki, who have gone through and done these Mythic missions in case you're curious to see what Mythic looks like in Halo 5 Guardians. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. Have you tried Mythic Difficulty? And if so, what's your favorite Mythic mission? Or even better, your favorite game to play Mythic on? You can let me know in the comments below, or please feel free to hit me up on both Facebook and Twitter, especially Twitter. Links to my social media accounts can be found in the description. And if you like this video, please share it. And I'm not just saying that because, I want people to watch this video, draw more attention to this site. I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing it for content creators in the future. I want them to understand this so that if they invest all their time and their effort and their blood and their sweat into their own project, into their own thing, I want them to be appreciated for it. I don't want them to get shafted like I did. I don't want them to get shafted like Naked Eli did. I want them to be appreciated. So please share this so we can get this conversation started. And if you like this video and you want to see more, click that subscribe button for more video game related content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on MythicTyrant.com. Don't forget about Q&A Saturdays as well as Sunday Fun Days. And I'll see you all right back here next time. Thanks again so much for watching, guys and gals. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.
Eternal takedown. All rounds clear, Spartan. Simulation complete. Level 9 Rex available.